Hi, we are Grigori Gharveyn. This is our introduction to our current project, our future history, how the earth made peace. Introduction, the Interfaith movement and world peace. Many teachers ask their classes this question. They may ask in different languages. They may ask in different cultures. But they all ask this question to remind our children about the evolution of world peace and how they may contribute to perpetuating world peace today. All right, children, who can tell us how world peace was achieved? All around the world, young hands go up when the teachers ask this question. Their students' eager hearts and minds wish to share their knowledge and learn more together. Teachers point to the best prepared students who will tell the story well to their younger peers. One child replies. She attempts to tell a tale familiar to all in her own words as best she can. Teacher, world peace was created by world unity, something no one in past times ever thought could be achieved. Very good, child. Can you tell us why no one expected world unity or world peace? Teacher, it is hard to believe, but long ago people fought wars. They were very unhappy then. Can anyone tell us what these wars were about? A new voice chimes in. Teacher, they fought over natural resources. They did not understand how we see things today, that our natural resources belong to the entire human race collectively. Another new voice joins the story. Teacher, they fought over nationalism. Their nations did not understand that their borders caused many people harm, particularly migratory or displaced people, but also people seeking work to better themselves and their people. Those were terrible lessons to us all, child. Many people once suffered from the injustices that built up around our old closed borders. Teacher, people also fought over the differences they perceived in each other's cultures and religions. They had no respect for their diversity or for themselves. Indeed, child, once people lacked respect for themselves, for their roles in their lives, for their own people, and for the world they shared together. We are fortunate to have much greater mutual respect today. Teacher, why did people fight over matters of religious doctrine or faith? Child, before the Interfaith movement, many people were afraid that their cultural heritage was under attack. They feared their holy scriptures were being threatened by other holy scriptures, because their holy scriptures differed from one another in many of their details. However, the problem goes much deeper than this, as some of you older students may already understand. Teacher, do you mean the cultural defense mechanisms? Correct. Cultural defense mechanisms are very powerful forces. They operate at the deepest levels of a person's mind, where they are largely unaware of them. Cultural defense mechanisms once served a powerful evolutionary purpose, but as we evolved and our resources expanded, the worlds in which our respective cultural defense mechanisms were once functional changed. For one thing, many cultures came together more quickly. The world seemed to shrink. Many people migrated to far places where their cultural identities were often exposed to abuse, such as ridicule. The world was a very sick and sorry place in those days. We are fortunate to have a much happier, healthier world today. Teacher, with all of our wealth, why must we learn about all these awful things from our past? Child, our wealth is a product of our ancestors' ignorance and their quest for enlightenment. Without their efforts to reach enlightenment, we would all be much more miserable now, as our ancestors were then. Or worse, we might have been killed. Only by understanding our past can we build an even better future, a future that will be the worlds we live in ourselves one day. But teacher, is this not already the best of all worlds? All human worlds are the best they can be, child, no matter how much suffering there may be. As wonderful as our own world is now, we can always do better. That is one of the most important parts of any human life. Our aspirations to make our worlds better places for our children. This may indeed be the best of all possible worlds so far, but what has yet to come may be a mystery so beautiful we may all be transformed by its appearance. The mystery is what makes life worth living. But we know so much already, teacher. What is left to be a mystery now? That is part of the mystery, child, explore. And so it goes, much like this, in classrooms all over the world. The history they review is a terrible tale, full of human suffering and injustice. But the wisdom they learn makes any future injustice unlikely, perhaps impossible. One can only hope. So many human voices contributed to the dialogue for world peace. However, the Interfaith movement became a critical local focal point as the time for building world peace grew closer. All religious faiths, whether those of a single individual or those with populations in the billions, have always shared a common purpose: to facilitate each person's direct and personal experiences of the divine. If, at some times, some religions' purposes were subverted for political, economic, or military purposes, this does not mean the religions so exploited were at fault. All human institutions are subject to potential corruption and abuse. If, at some times, people of different religions fail to adequately respect one another, they may once have fought wars, real wars on battlefields, or cultural wars of subversion, or economic wars of suppression. Being able to engage in warfare of every sort was once a requisite part of any social institution, including all religions. Without their various cultural defense mechanisms, all states, religions, and other social institutions once faced dissolution. Consequently, aggressive behavior became the characteristic response of many cultural defense mechanisms. The phrase, "the best defense is a strong offense," became very popular. However, as we know today, the best defense is no defense, for we have nothing that needs to be defended. However, in our recent past history, we once bristled with defense postures for every sort of thing we believed we depended upon, whether we were defending our religions or our choices of toothpastes. Not long ago, the world was ruled with fear. Fear, as it happens, is a very effective social conditioning tool, but also a very wasteful tool. Fear saps everyone's strength. Fear feeds despair and opens a path to misery. However, fear was such a prevalent tool for social conditioning that nearly everyone used it. People were conditioned to be afraid their teeth were not white enough. People were conditioned to fear their peers would mock their poverty if they did not display all the most expensive and fashionable trends. People were conditioned to fear their social status would suffer if they did not appear to be reasonably devout and hard-working. People were conditioned to fear that they could not advance in commerce without undermining their competitors' businesses. There was much fear in those days, but in some of the very worst fears were the fears of poverty, disease, and injustice. Many people suffered from these terrible shadows that blighted large segments of our old nation's populations. Poverty was nearly pandemic in those days. Perhaps a very few of all people lived in extreme luxury then, while far too many starved or were killed by disease due to poverty. We now know that poverty is more a state of mind or spirit, but in those days poverty was imposed economically because it was a useful tool to socially condition all people, wealthy and poor alike. Anyone not part of the most powerful and wealthy elite were conditioned with poverty or with fear of poverty. The injustices in those times were enormous. Along the old border between the USA and Mexico, people were risking their lives every day to illegally cross over into the United States to look for better paying work. Many of these people were exploited and sold into virtual slavery because in the USA their illegal status gave their new masters a hold on them they feared to challenge. Challenges were often met with murder. Along other borders, similar stories were also unfolding, including trafficking in human slaves, the disruption of migratory peoples, and the bottlenecking of refugees fleeing war or famine. The old national boundaries had to be dissolved, but first, we needed to achieve world peace, to establish the trust that we could cooperate together as a people united by our mutual self-interests wherever we may live. The Interfaith movement played a major role in helping diffuse the tensions between people of every identity, nationality, culture, or religious differences. This is our heritage to all future generations, that all of our ancestors helped us to achieve world peace. This is our heritage, our gift to our children, the gift of our parents, our story of how our ancestors contributed to establishing world peace in their lifetimes. Namaste.